सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome back to my joining me on My Yatra, the journey to the divine self. So, in our epics of the Sanatana Dharma, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, those epics, we also call them as itihas because those are historical events that have taken place and they're more than just stories of entertainment. These stories are actually reflections of how our lives are reflected in all of these epics, and it teaches us to observe really keenly to understand what is going on and what lies beyond the surface of what we see at a superficial level, right? And up until now, we used to be very strong on both the art of storytelling and the art of listening. Those were two extremely important skills because that taught us a lot about how to live life and how we should really have a good conduct. However, instead of understanding those glories, they've been dismissed. The narrative has been completely changed, and they've been dismissed as like, those are mythological stories. These are impossible events that would have never happened. And the narrative has been shifted, unfortunately. But I'm not going to get into what should have been done, how should we have been pulled it, but just know that rather than raising our level of understanding to understand those stories, we were trying to pull those stories down to our level of existence. And to set the record straight, even if we don't believe that these were stories that actually happened, let's forget the Ramayana and the Mahabharata if you don't believe in those. But what if I told you that our internal chatter that's going on in our minds is really what reflects and comes across as our reality in the external world that we are living in? Think about that for a moment. This internal chatter is what gets reflected out as the life that we live. So, if we want a better life, if we want to see better things in our lives, guess what do we have to change? It's as simple as changing your internal chatter, the mind, the stories we tell ourselves, and the narratives we feed our mind. Right? We've come a long ways on this yatra of so many lives. This yatra is really the journey of eternal journey of the soul. And we've navigated through so many twists and turns in our journey. I myself personally am extremely grateful for all the challenges and all the bends I've seen because it finally brought me to this alignment model, right? Where my internal chatter and my external reality, I started to see the patterns of how these were just simply a mirror reflection of each other. And I'm going to share with you the secret sauce of how to change that internal chatter. It's easier said than done for sure, but there is hope. We've already seen that we were born as a bundle of joy, and the treasure that we all seek, the joy, peace, happiness, is already within us. We've been equipped with that. We've already seen that. We've been equipped with this. But because it's bundled and tied up with a lot of other skills, talents, passions, likes, dislikes, all our desires, it kind of gets hard to reach down to the core unless you start unraveling this spaghetti. We call it as a spaghetti diagram at work. So unless we start unraveling it, it will not lead us to discovering the joy, peace, and happiness. We do not have to go anywhere external. It's all within our reach. And many of us, we just, if you were to break down the society into different types of people, There are some people for whom survival itself is enough. I mean, they are barely surviving. So to think of some higher order thinking and questions, higher order questions is just with it beyond their reach, because they are so focused on their day-to-day survival that they don't have the capacity to think anything further than that. There's another section of the society where they have all these means and equipments, but there's too many other things that are pulling them towards, there's more things they want to pursue, and meaning of life, purpose of life, those kind of questions, they are not currently in their interest. So they would rather spend time doing other things rather than seeking this higher order thinking. And then there is a third section of the society for whom they've seen that they don't have to struggle for survival. They've been there, done that, and moved on from pursuing happiness from different sources, and have realized that happiness lies and resides within me. So now what is it that can I do to get to that happiness? So I'm talking to that set of people. And when we do our standard analysis, we break it down into the who, what, when, where, why. And that kind of model works very well for me. So let's talk about the why portion of it. You may have heard about the saying that there are two important days in your life. One, when you were born, and the second day, when you discovered why you were born. That is so important, to seek the purpose. What was I sent to this earth for? Why was I born? And what am I going to do with this gift of life that I have received? Right? So this why, hashtag know your why, is very important, because unless we know the why, it would be a meaningless existence. Exist, everybody does. I don't need to know this purpose of life. I don't need to know why was I born. I can go down my daily life, do the mundane tasks, and go in this repeat mode every single day. Wake up, do your chores, go down the same path, drive down the same path to your office, get into the same spreadsheets and models and what have you, come back home, take care of your kids, family, wife, husband, whatever, and then continue the cycle day in, day out, repeating this same cycle. But is that the kind of existence you really want? Or do you want to light up and ask yourself, what is the purpose of my life? Why was I born? What is this leading me to? On the outside, it comes across as questions such as, what is it that lights me up? When is it that I'm in my element? Or how can I show up authentically? When you align those kind of questions, you will find that existence is not a mere daily, mundane, routine task to be done, but joyful living. And that's a whole different ballgame of living joyfully in this life. So, of the who, what, when, where, why, the first why is understand, why was I born? What is the purpose of my life? Now, let's go to the second component of who. The who portion of it asks myself, who am I? Right? And I'm going to share this exercise that I've done countless number of times with many, many different groups of people of different ages. And if you ask them, who are you? Think about it and write down your answers. Who are you? You will find that most of the times this identity is centered around, I am Dr. Maneesha Asundi, either around your name. No, that's not what I asked. I asked you, who are you? Well, I'm a person from India. I didn't ask you your ethnicity. Who are you? I'm a woman of color. I didn't ask you your gender. Who are you? Well, I am so and so's wife, or so and so's mother, or so and so's sister. I didn't ask about your family relationships. Who are you? I am a product manager. I didn't ask you for your job title. Who are you? And pretty much you see after these 4 or 5 different things that people play around, they just cannot go beyond these 4 or 5 layers. So if you go deeper and deeper, you start unpeeling all those labels of gender, ethnicity, marital status, your family relationships, all of those come off. And then you start seeing and uncovering different labels. And all of these different labels are the ones that have come from your past history, right? Your past has some experiences, and then people have stuck labels on that pickle jar as you were passing through. And then you start identifying with those labels. I'm competent, I'm incompetent, I am confident, I am not confident, I'm enough, I'm not enough, I'm worthless, or I'm worthy. All of these different labels become very, very important. And to a point that sometimes you either deviate and start believing in those labels to the point that you no longer recognize yourself. Or on the flip side, you might start peeling off those labels and start really reaching that deep core portion of you, the inner core portion that tells you you are none of these labels that have been, stuck on you. And it could be excruciatingly painful to peel off these labels, because that label is a source of security. It's a sense of security. However comfortable or uncomfortable you may be, but that does give you a sense of security, a sense of identity, so as to speak, right? But once you shift gears and you say, nope, I'm none of these labels, I really need to get down to the core of who am I, you will realize you are that joy, peace, happiness that you've been seeking with. Those are the labels that you want to stick to your heart. You start becoming fearless, and you start becoming joyful, and you start showing up authentically, because you are none of these labels. That's not who you are. And you come to terms with what am I and who am I really identified with. So we looked at the why was I born on this earth? Who am I? The next portion would be the what. Many of us can identify and talk about the what do you do in life? Well, I do blah, blah, blah. And you can list down all of those tasks. But that's not the type of questions we're asking ourselves. What we're asking is, what toolkit have you come to this earth with? And on the surface, this toolkit could be your body, mind, intellect. And in the past episodes, we've seen what was the function of each one of this, how information was relayed back and forth, and how the body sensory organs related to the mind, who sent it to the intellect, related back to the decision making, and the body just executed those, should be executing those decisions. But in understanding what equipment do I have, and instead of just saying that these body, mind, intellect, these are the tools that I have to be used, we get so tied and connected to those tools that we identify as a body. We identify ourselves as a mind. We identify ourselves as the intellect. And you can see around for yourself and see how much time people spend, how much resources are spent on perfecting your body, getting in shape, you have to be the best version of yourself. Really, how does it matter, right? For example, if you go to a party and you drive a blue Tesla, I drive a Tesla. So do you really go and introduce yourself like, hello, I am the blue Tesla? Or, hello, I'm the Mercedes, or, hey there, I'm the BMW. That is ridiculous. That's just a vehicle to get you from point A to point B. Similarly, the body, mind, intellect, these are simple tools to be used in this yatra, and take care of those instruments to the extent that they help you move through this life journey. But if you start focusing too heavily and ridiculously spending time on, focusing on how fat, thin, tall, short, dark, not dark, black, white. How does that matter? Really, how does that matter? Or if somebody just rejects a proposal I brought to the table or rejected my idea, instead of saying it was a thought that was rejected, I really get hurt and I take it so personally that I was rejected. And that is an erroneous belief. You are not your body, mind, intellect. You're just to use those as equipment and not get too attached to those as though you are the body, mind, intellect. I've done another experiment many, many times with different groups of people. And I invited them for breakfast, gathered an assortment of cups. Some cups were really good ones, shiny ones, bright ones, patterned ones, polka dotted ones. And then there were some that were chipped, some had broken handles, some were really ew on the inside. You know, like when you drink tea or coffee from a cup repeatedly over many, many years, it kind of gets some discoloration on the inside. And then some were horrible. Even I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. But the point was, I got everybody, and in this general conversation, poured out orange juice in each of those cups, put them on a tray, and offered it to this group who had assembled. And you could see this hesitation in people's reactions as they went to pick up a cup. As you could guess, the good looking ones were immediately picked up, and then finally, whatever was remaining on the tray were the discolored ones, or the broken ones, or the really bad ones that nobody wanted to touch with the 10-foot pole. And didn't make a big deal out of it. Let this happen, and we continued with our conversations. But as we reconvened, I drew their attention to the fact that look at the choices we made in as simple as which cup am I going to drink from? It was the same orange juice in every single cup, yet the attention did not go on the orange juice. The attention was how did it look from the outside, right? And our behaviors in this world are pretty much the same. We fail to see that enlivening principle that runs in every single person, every single animal, plant, mountain. I mean, you name it, this entire universe, it's the same conscious principle that binds it together. Yet we focus so heavily on the way it looks that we either accept people because they form, they are within this mold of what my perception of how they should look or feel, or we completely reject them like, oops, nope, I don't want to deal with you. And those kind of choices, instead of embracing diversity, we exclude people or things that don't match our perceptions. And you get the point, right? Our choices, instead of becoming responses, conscious responses, they become unconscious reactions. And that was just food for thought. You've also probably heard, so like, where do these choices, how do these conscious, unconscious responses and reactions, where are they coming from? So you've probably heard this quote, many, people have said this, be careful, watch your thoughts, because thoughts become words. Watch your words, because they become your actions. Watch your actions, because they become habits. Watch your habits, because they become your character. And then watch your character, because that becomes your destiny. And I hold this very, very close to my heart and have taught this to many kids, many adults. Thoughts become words, words become actions. That's why you say actions are louder than words. Actions repeated over a period of time become habits. And then let's just stop at this thought word, action, and habits. Habits have the potential to define your character and your destiny. So if you want a better destiny, change one of these things. The thoughts, because this is all going in the same flow. The thoughts that you have, they become the words, become your actions, become habits. And how often have you said, like, oops, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to say that? Then why did it come out of your mouth? That means it was an unconscious response that just you just blurted out. You didn't mean to, but that's an afterthought, right? So we should be able to hold back and open or close the floodgates for the words to come out of our lips, because our lips are the magnets that attract our realities, because you've seen the sequence, and that destiny that you're attracting has the roots in your words, and the words have roots in your thoughts. Now, let's take up a simple habit, and I'm going to take two examples to show you. Pick up any habit you want. And the habits that I got over were, one of them was procrastination. Big time, right? Everybody, you either you know somebody, or you may be the person who always has a tendency to procrastinate. You're delaying the tasks, you pick up less desirable, but the importance of the tasks, you just go according to your likes and dislikes on which ones do you focus on versus which ones you avoid. So that procrastination habit, if let's do the reverse engineering. So from the habit, let's move on to what caused the habit was your actions. So how do these actions show up? Scrolling on your phones or browsing through the internet for hours together, binge watching on the television. We're all guilty of that. We've done that at some point. But remember, these are the actions that led to that habit of procrastination. Constantly engaging in non-essential tasks and completely blowing off your responsibilities and deadlines, right? So those type of actions, how could I correct them? As I was reverse engineering, I went back. So, okay, my words were what caused my actions. So if I'm constantly browsing or scrolling through my phone or spending too much time on social media, what words, what stories was I telling myself? What were the underlying beliefs I held for those stories to come out? And the self-sabotaging narratives that we tell ourselves, that could be a whole different topic that we could spend an entire hour on. That's not the point. But the kind of stories I told myself was like, oh, the reason I was avoiding those tasks was because I'm not good at it. I'm never going to get this. And people had labeled me as being careless, being incompetent. So I believed maybe I really was careless and incompetent. Or what's the point? I have to redo this anyway. So I'll just, wait till something else happens and then pick up that task to be completed. Those were the stories I was telling myself. And if those are the words, what was the thought that triggered those to come out, right? The thoughts, if you really go deep into your thoughts, and this took some effort for me to realize that I really was dealing with the fear of failure. Sometimes, because I've been in change management this whole time, lack of clarity used to be very scary of like, how do you work in this ambiguity? And very often, more likely than not, it's your strong likes and dislikes that make you pursue and do certain tasks, or make you avoid certain things because it's too much, or simple fear of rejection. Being a people pleaser, you just want everyone to love what you're doing, and that people pleasing attitude would show up as the fear of rejection, which would translate into words like, okay, I'm not good enough, and like, I won't try it right now. Then it led to those actions of binge watching television, which then eventually became a habit, and it would have taken me on a completely different path. So once I understood this loop, I realized that I have to tackle this. This cannot keep going on. So all you need to do is simply reframe it to a different way. And you can access your thoughts if your mind is available for you. If that's not available, because thoughts, they come at such a strong force and with such strong speed that you may not always have access to those thoughts and no control over it. Then maybe take there's different techniques for thought management. That's not the point. I then could focus on the words and the actions. Like I knew I had a problem binge watching or scrolling the internet or just simply watching, reels on film. That is what was taking up too much time. So you could correct those behaviors and then rewrite and tell the right stories to yourself, right? Those, for example, I learned how to do time boxing. And many people have also tried this. For example, if I had to clean this room, it's an overwhelming task for me. You just time box yourself. Give yourself as small as 5, 10, 15, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 60 minutes, maybe 2 hours, whatever the task requires and whatever time you can allocate for yourself. But time box it. So for 15 minutes, I'm going to do nothing else but dot, dot, dot. It could be the cleaning up the room, or, if you're doing, like I do data analysis, I just keep looking at the data to see what stories is it telling me so that I have some data driven insights. And that was very, very helpful. Another technique that I learned was something called Eisenhower matrix, which categorizes tasks on the basis of how important they are and how urgent they are. That way, you can either delegate them, or actually, if they are both very important and urgent, then you have no other option but to do it. If they are important but not urgent, you can schedule them to be done at a later time. If they're neither important nor urgent, why are we even talking about that, right? Just delete them from your list, because many people have the tendency to go after those tasks that are neither important nor urgent. And then we wonder, like, where did this time go? And then they have issues with time management. So those kind of techniques were very helpful. Let me take another example of indecisiveness. If you've been following me, you know how the 3 C's are very close to my heart: choices, chances that create change. Okay. So the habit of indecisiveness, not being able to make a choice, that's not going to help you in getting to the leadership position that you aspire for. Right. So the actions that I saw happening that I could identify were getting in this analysis paralysis, or having a difficult time just committing to something, or completely avoiding the choices. Or maybe you rely on upper management to tell you what to do rather than calling the shots and taking that chance and saying, okay, put a stake in the ground and you say, this is north. And always second guessing yourself even after you've taken the decisions, like, should I have gone should I have gone that route, or was this the right direction? Unless we do it, there is no way we would even know right, wrong, or indifferent, right? But those were the actions, those are the patterns that you see. And I used to use the words like, oh, I have decision fatigue. I can't decide. It's so difficult to choose. What do you think I should do? Oh, if I send this, will my boss realize that this was just a draft? Like, this is not the final document, it's just a draft. But these were things I was telling myself and sabotaging my own work, right? And then I look back at, like, what thoughts were triggering these kind of words and actions. And I realized perfectionism was getting in my way. trying to be perfect was so important that it really is not helping you in any way. My coach actually gave me a framed quote that said, progress over perfection. Right? You may not have all the answers right now, and it's a-okay. At least start the journey and don't put off, don't be indecisive, just make the change, make a choice to take a chance to make the change. And that worked really beautiful for me, because when I was doing the reverse engineering, I was able to cut it out at the root level itself. When I adopted the progress over perfection approach, I let go the need for my perfectionism, and I really drew inspiration from Brene Brown. She was one of my best friends, virtual friends, of course, because in her book Dare to Lead, and in many of her talks, she has used this phrase: if you are not in the arena with me, you have no business criticizing or judging my work. And that completely eliminated all the doubts, fears, negative self talk that I had, and all the self limiting beliefs that I was imposing on myself. These were self imposed. Maybe people were not even perceiving it that way. But I no longer kept second guessing myself. Am I good enough? Will I be accepted? It's like, nope, you just, engage in what you do. You have data to back up your insights. You work on data driven insights, and you just learn to observe the passing thoughts, because those thoughts, you don't have a you really it's an art to manage and control your thoughts. So if you just let them come as they arise and simply be an observer, the thought loses its potency to have any control over you. It's like all of a sudden everybody in the room is, attentive, because they know the boss is watching you. And it's literally a game that I started playing with my own self and my own thoughts. It's like, oh, okay, I see you. You can like high thought and by thought. And this was one of the best tricks I've taught many, 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 many children and adults. Just be an observer, no judgment, because those thoughts have been there in your subconscious from so long ago, and your past, everything that's coming from your past, you have no control, because that past has made a deep rooted impression on your stories that you tell, or the labels that you've created, or beliefs that you have. You really have no control over the past. But as those thoughts come in and they pass through this floodgate, you have the chance to fish for the thoughts that you want to pursue. You can choose. Should I just even do anything with this thought, or let it pass? Because once it loses its potency, it dies down and it has zero impact or zero control over what it can do to you. And as I started watching this, I saw some changes within me. One of them was the attitude of gratitude that just became stronger and stronger and stronger every time. And even in midst of challenges, I have always found a way to be excited about these challenges. I no longer say like, oops, that's too difficult, I don't want to tackle it. It's like, okay, bring it on, because I know what's triggering me. It was this past stories about myself, but I also have many, many different stories from my past of being successful. Yet the mind always chooses on the failures. There could be only one failure in all of these things. Yet that is the one that gets blown up and highlighted instead of all the thousands of success stories that you have. I learned this art of picking and choosing which one was I going to focus on, and how am I going to use it as a tool in my yatra. And I literally found this treasure hunt, and the joy, happiness, peace that I was seeking, I got closer and closer and closer to accessing it, because now it's within reach. I know that it is right here, right now, and I just have to go reach for it. And that is who I am. When you realize the purpose, life was a gift. Life that you got was a gift. And what you do with that life is a gift that you give back to this creator. And it's just beautiful to be in that, reveling in that state of mind and in understanding that I really don't need to be chasing external things, people, places, the vastu, vyakti, paristiti that we talked about. So the why, who, what, where meaning, like every single moment, your mindfulness has to be at a very heightened level of mindfulness. You cannot, even 1 minute or a moment of distraction can lead to an accident, right? So the same way, even a moment of distraction from this treasure can take you completely off track and your train would go in a different direction, right? So the why, who, what, where, when, but like the where part of it, like where is this leading me to? It's leading you to your nature, for you to understand who you are, and then to just revel in that state of bliss. There could be nothing more joyful and more happier than that. So, my dear friends, if this episode resonates with you, please like or follow the channel and share it with someone else who might benefit from it. Leave me a comment or send me an email at manisha@myyatra.vip. Thank you so much. And as always, let's close with the closing prayers of reminding ourselves of the completeness that we are in. Om Purnamadam Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you.